What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Juicy Jet Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Rooney, and while there's not a lot going on in the NFL, we have another very fun episode today because there's a lot of talk going on Jets Twitter. Everybody's bored. They're trying to figure out what to do with their time while we wait for football to come back. So there's been a lot of talk about the top 10 plays in New York Jets history. So I figure might as well throw my hat in the ring and I'll give you my top 10. And I can't wait for people to argue with me about what I left out and where I put things in my rankings and all that kind of stuff. So that's going to be really fun. Of course, we're going to do our trivia question. Of course, we're going to do our gym break. I also want to do a little bit of news around what's going on in the NFL today, including one thing about the Jets, which is a little more on the somber side, and then what's happening with these trades that are going on in the NFL right now. So let's dive in and do our trivia question first. Okay, the New York Jets, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The New York Jets have 5 players who have their numbers retired, which means no other person can actually wear that number ever again as a New York Jet. And there's also one coach who has his jacket retired. Who are the 5 players? What were their numbers? And who is the one coach? So that is our question. 5 players, numbers retired. Who are the players? What are their numbers? And who is the coach? Good luck, and we'll answer the question when we get to the end. With that, let's go into some news in the NFL today. Very sad news in New York Jets land because one of their legends, one of the people who was a legend of Super Bowl III, was one of the anchors of that Buddy Ryan defense when we actually won the Super Bowl, Jets-Colts, 16-7. Gerry Philbin, one of the legendary DNs on that team, actually passed away at 83 most recently. I think it was 4 days ago. Now for him, he was probably our most feared player on defense, I would say. Like Larry Grantham was getting old. You think about, there's some good players in the secondary. Like we've talked about like Johnny Sample before and folks like that. But that defensive line was really good. And it's one of the reasons why we won the Super Bowl. I mean, we held the best team in the NFL while we were in the AFL to only 7 points in the Super Bowl, 4 interceptions, multiple sacks. Unfortunately for Jerry, sacks weren't really a metric that was recorded back then. In 1968, he had 14 and a half sacks, but it's unverified because the footage isn't great from back then, and it just wasn't something that they actually tracked. So while he was an anchor for the defense, it's tough to say how good he was historically when you compare him to some of the folks of his era and some of the people today, obviously. But he was 2-time first-team All-AFL, remember, because there was no combined NFL then. It was 2 separate leagues. He was two-time, I guess, Pro Bowler, I guess you'd call it, back then. He's in the Ring of Honor. He's a part of like the Jets' like all-time team. So it's sad. All those players from Super Bowl III are starting to get real old, but he was one of the better players. When you actually watch, they do this thing called A Football Life on NFL Network. It's like NFL's Greatest Games, I think it is, and it goes through all the Super Bowls, and they have 3 people from each of the teams actually talk about the Super Bowl and like the season leading up to the Super Bowl. And the 3 players that talked about it were Joe Namath, Don Maynard, and Gerry Philbin. So it's really cool to see, obviously the 2 superstars on offense, and then you get Gerry Philbin who's holding down the defensive side. So yeah, it's a cool episode. You guys should go watch. I think it's America's Greatest Game or America's Game, something like that. Check it out on NFL Network if you can, or just look it up on YouTube. I'm sure it's there. So that's the sad news. Now back pivoting into the regular NFL, there's really not a lot that's typically going on during this time. It's normally, players going away on vacation, getting ready for the season. They're probably working out. Coaches and GMs are trying to finalize cap situations, rosters, things like that. How are they going to run training camp? They're probably doing a little bit of work on who are the teams we're going to play. I imagine Darren Muji is doing some scouting of college players for next year. I imagine he's trying to get his whole staff together. I imagine he's looking at all the other leagues that are out there. So like the UFL and all those crazy leagues, the CFL, to see if there are any players that he can bring in. But something wild happened today. And it's funny because this is the opening of the NHL and NBA free agency, and the NFL makes probably one of the bigger splashes you could possibly make. So what happens is the Miami Dolphins and the Pittsburgh Steelers make a trade. So essentially what the Dolphins trade away is Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith, so their star corner, who's getting up there in age now, not the same player that he used to be, and Jonnu Smith, who used to play under Arthur Smith, who was the offensive coordinator for the Steelers. They've been on the same team 3 times, or 4 times. So Arthur Smith loves him. And they traded him for a late round pick, or I think it was a pick swap. And then Minkah Fitzpatrick, who is a star safety for the Steelers that actually used to play for the Dolphins, that they traded away to the Steelers. So wild trade. Rarely do you see player for player trades like this in the NFL, with like picks not really being a big deal, but it happened. So for me, from the Steelers side, getting Jonnu Smith, Jalen Ramsey, I'm not surprised. It's the Aaron Rodgers. This is his last year. They're going all in. They're going to do whatever it possibly takes to try to win the Super Bowl. Makes total sense. Jalen Ramsey, getting a little bit older. I think he's got a little bit more flexibility where he could play safety or corner or slot right now. He can kind of shift around and be multidimensional here, but he's getting older. So hopefully those corners on the Steelers can step up. Well, I'm not going to say hopefully because I hope the Jets beat them on week 1, but they're hoping that those corners can step up, where Jalen Ramsey can kind of be that like jack of all trades. That's what I'm guessing. And then Jonnu Smith, obviously, this takes away catches from Pat Freiermuth, so I'm very surprised. They have a lot of tight ends, the Steelers. I didn't really understand why they needed Jonnu Smith, but I guess Arthur Smith wanted him, so what are you going to do? So that should be interesting. Any fantasy players out there, I probably wouldn't draft Pat Freiermuth because those catches are going to get split now. So yeah, this is the all-in on Aaron Rodgers. I still think the Steelers need a wide receiver. It's like DK Metcalf and then a bunch of random people. So who's that veteran going to be? Are they going to sign Amari Cooper? Are they going to sign Keenan Allen, one of those folks? So we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks before training camp starts. Now for the Dolphins. While I look at the Steelers and I say I totally understand the strategy that they're going with, I look at the Dolphins and I say, what are the Dolphins up to? Like, what are they doing? When I look at their roster, you pull up their depth chart. Now I go to tight end. So without Jonnu Smith, their tight ends are Julian Hill, Pharaoh Brown, Tanner Connor, and Hayden Rucci. They're in market for a tight end. They need one. Because right now, I'm putting all my eggs into the Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. Who would be our third receiver? Maybe Malik Washington at this point? Maybe it's those running backs. I don't know. That was a weird one to me. I don't know why they had to get rid of Jonnu Smith, besides that he wanted a new contract. I don't really understand that. And then the cornerback room. Holy cow. They've got Storm Duck, Cam Smith, Isaiah Johnson, Ethan Robinson, Jason Marshall, Ethan Bonner, Ryan Cooper, and BJ Adams. I don't hear a starter in that entire group. Maybe Cam Smith. Storm Duck is in his second year. I don't know what they're going to do at corner. And now at safety, they have our old buddy Ashton Davis and now Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now, Minkah, it's so weird what the Dolphins just did. Minkah's in his prime, and they trade him away to the Steelers. Minkah's now leaving his prime, and they trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick. That is like the most backward thing I've ever heard in my life. But hey, Dolphins are going to Dolphin. They're probably still better than the Jets. I mean, I still think if Tua's healthy, they're probably still going to be a better offense than us. But man, this doesn't scream a team that's going to beat the Bills consistently or like make a run in the playoffs. They haven't won a playoff game since before I was born, I think. So we'll see what the Dolphins are up to, but that was a very weird situation. All right. That is it in the NFL. That's really all that's happened. So let's take a gym break here. For those of you that haven't been here before, I'm a Jets, Islanders, Mets, Knicks fan. So JAM spells Jim with a silent K on the end. Let's talk really quick about the Islanders. Huge draft on Thursday night and Friday. Or no, was that? Yeah, that was Thursday night, Friday, and We had the number one overall pick in the draft. It was actually I was surprised how emotional it was. We drafted Matthew Schaefer, and he just recently lost his mom a few months ago. Holy cow, it was very dramatic the way that whole situation went down, where he loses his mom. The Islanders put one of those cancer ribbons on his jersey that he puts on when they announce the pick. He starts bawling. Everybody's crying. It was a disaster. But he seems like a great kid, 17 years old, so he's still young. He looks like a great skater, so very excited to see him. And we traded away Noah Dobson, so we need someone to step up as a young defenseman who can also score. So we'll see how Matthew Schaefer does, but very excited to have him on the team. Then with the Noah Dobson trade, they have two other picks in the first round. They get number 16 and number 17. I thought they were going to trade up for James Higgins, draft him because he's the Long Island kid, plays offense. He grew up an Islanders fan, but it doesn't work out. They just decide to stay put. I guess they couldn't move up. And they take Victor Eklund and Kayshawn Aitchison. So we'll see how those two players, we have a very young system of players coming up, a lot of young talent. So we'll see. The Islanders, while I don't think they're going to be that great this year, I think the future is pretty bright, especially with this new GM. So we'll see how that goes. And then finally, the last piece for the New York Islanders is today they re-sign Alex Romanov, 8-year deal, $50 million, 6.5 per year. Well, I'm not too worried about the cap figure, 6.5. The cap's going to grow over time, so that's going to look pretty cheap as the years go on. I thought 8 years was a lot. So you're banking on a 25-year-old still being good when he's 30, 31, 32, 33. We'll see if the years work out, but he's a good player. So we'll see how it goes, and it wasn't too expensive. So the Islanders are off and running. The New York Mets, oh boy. The Mets are a disaster. They've lost 12 of 15, I think, or 13 of 15. It does not look good. The offense cannot score. Soto is the only one who is actually scoring. They had a players-only meeting the other day just to talk about what's going on, and then the next day they get shellacked 12-1 by the Pirates. They just got swept by the Pirates. It's a mess. I don't know what they're going to do because they're rolling out these pitchers that I've never heard of before. Their hitters aren't hitting. The back half of the roster is terrible right now. The bullpen is a disaster. And then even when the bullpen plays well, we can't hit. Or if the starter does well, then the bullpen blows it up. It's a mess. Still early. We'll see how it goes. But not pumped about what the Mets are doing right now. Knicks, no big news. We had the draft last week, but the Knicks didn't have any first-round picks. One of the interesting things that came up in their chase for a head coach, Dawn Staley was someone who was brought up. I thought that would be a really cool hire for the Knicks. I don't know if it's going to happen, but that was a very interesting name that was thrown out there. So we'll keep waiting, see what's going on. Who knows? Maybe by opening day, we still won't have a coach. I'm not really sure, but that's where we're at with the Knicks. Okay. That was our gym break. Let's head into my top 10 plays in New York Jets history. So I'm going to go backward 10-1. I feel pretty good about my rankings, but for me, obviously, I haven't been alive the entire time the Jets have been an organization. So if there are any older fans out there that know of any really cool moments or plays that I may have missed, please let me know. But I think I've incorporated a good amount. So we'll see. And then I have a lot of honorable mentions. There were a lot of players, and I'll do honorable mentions at the end. A lot of plays that I feel like I missed that I wanted to incorporate that I just didn't. So let's start with number 10. We're going to start with number 10. Now, just remember, for me, some of this is emotional to me too. It's things that I saw live that meant more. It was louder in the moment, in the crowd, and something that was a really exciting play that I won't forget. So I think that's going to make a difference here. Now, number 10, I was between two plays, and it's really driving me nuts. I think I'm going to go with this one. The Jets' last home playoff game was in 2002 against the Indianapolis Colts. It was a shellacking. We crushed Peyton Manning and that Indianapolis Colts team 41-0. It was, I believe, my only home game I've ever been to in the playoffs. Me and my brother, pretty young, like standing on our chairs watching the game the whole time because you just stand up the whole playoff game. And I think it was like the fifth play. Chad Pennington rolls out, little dump off screen to our fullback, Richie Anderson. And I think that's why it makes this play so great, is that it was to our fullback, Richie Anderson, who was a great receiver, great runner as a fullback back then. Very underutilized today, how fullbacks are used. But it was like him, Mike Allstott, the guys like that who constantly got the ball. And he runs 56 yards for a touchdown on the fifth play of the game. I think it was like the longest play in Jets postseason history for a touchdown at the time. So for me, that stands out because I was at that game. It's just such a big moment. And then, of course, everything else happens in that game to just dominate. Curtis Martin running all over everybody. It was just a wild scene to beat Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, all those guys back then. So I'm going with that one, number 10. Richie Anderson, congratulations. You made the top 10 plays in Jets history. Number 9, I'm going to take us back to 2010, the playoff run in 2010. The New York Jets are playing the Indianapolis Colts in their stadium. Peyton Manning's like on his last legs as an Indianapolis Colt, but they're beating us. And I believe it was with maybe 20 seconds left. Well, the play before was one that I was contemplating, or a couple plays before. The New York Jets are down, and I believe there's maybe under a minute left in the game. The Colts kick off to the Jets, and who do we put back there is Antonio Cromartie to run back like a 50-yard kick return to get us closer to field goal range. But we weren't close enough. We had Nick Folk. He's not known for a big leg. He's known for being accurate. So what do? We call a very risky play. We're on like I think we're on the 32-yard line, and we call a play down to the 18, which is a back shoulder to Braylon Edwards down the right side of the field. He leaps up. Cornerback's nowhere to really be seen on this play. Leaps up, makes an incredible grab, toe taps both feet in. I believe with maybe 4 or 3 seconds left. I think we take a knee, 4 or 3 seconds left, and then Nick Folk kicks the game winner to win. So I am calling Braylon Edwards' catch my number 9 overall play in Jets history because we walk it off, win the game, and we move on to Foxborough, go play the Patriots. So Braylon Edwards, he actually could have had a few moments in this top 10, and I'll tell you about some of the other ones coming up. All right, so that's 10-9. Number 8. Number 8 is one of my favorite in history, and it actually involves one of the players I just talked about, Antonio Cromartie. But the Jets are playing the San Diego Chargers back in 2009 in that playoff run. So I guess it was 2010 by that point. It's 10-7 in the fourth quarter, and I think there's only 7 minutes left. So we're winning, but the game is not in hand at all. So what happens? The New York Jets hand the ball off to Shawn Green. Who ever thought that Shawn Green was going to get a moment in the top 10 plays in New York Jets history, but he could have a few. So what he does, he runs 53 yards right up the middle, and there is a clear lane for Antonio Cromartie to make a tackle, and he gets scared. He stands there like a deer in headlights. Shawn Green blows right by him, runs into the end zone, and then, of course, Antonio Cromartie is all pissed off, slams him with his shoulder as Shawn Green gets in the end zone, and then he does the LT football flip in the end zone for a touchdown. So that was a huge play. It still didn't seal the game. The Chargers march down the field. The Jets get it back, and it's 3rd and 1. I think it was 4th and 1, and we punch Thomas Jones up the middle to actually seal that game. But Shawn Green gets my number 8 overall play in New York Jets history for helping us beat the San Diego Chargers, who were one of the best teams in the league, and that got us to the AFC Championship game. So that goes to Shawn Green. All right, so where am I at? So that's 8. We are at number 7. Play number 7. This goes back, way back, to the 80s. Now, I don't know a ton about these games. It's very hard to find highlights. It's very hard to find full games from the early 80s. But the Jets were a really good football team. They were playing against the Raiders And I think Jim Plunkett was the quarterback back then. And there was about, I think it was 17-14. This is 1982 in the divisional round of the AFC playoffs. And Lance Mel, linebacker for the Jets, has 2 interceptions in the last 3 minutes to help seal the game against Jim Plunkett and the Raiders. So his first interception comes with a little over 2.5 minutes left. And then the second one was even more important with 1:40 left in the game. And I think they were in field goal range, the Raiders. So it actually sealed the Jets from, or prevented the Jets from giving up a game-tying field goal and actually move on to the AFC Championship game. So I'm giving it to Lance Mel for that second interception, the one that was clutch with 1:40 left to lock down that game against the Raiders. Gets us to the AFC Championship game against I believe, the Miami Dolphins in that one. So that was Lance Mel. He makes the top 10. You don't hear a lot about him in Jets history, but that was his big moment. All right, the next one. This is number, what am I at, 6? Number 6. I tried to take into account the moment behind some of these games. This one didn't really have like playoff type app. It wasn't like a playoff game or anything like that, but it's one of the wildest games, not only in Jets history, in NFL history. This is a massive shootout. I believe this was in 1986, I want to say. Let me see if I actually have the year here. 1986. This is the Jets-Dolphins classic shootout. This is Dan Marino versus Ken O'Brien. The Jets actually passed on Dan Marino for Ken O'Brien. And Dan Marino obviously goes on to be one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever live. But Ken O'Brien put up a fight in this game. This game ends 51-45 in overtime. There were 13 touchdowns. I believe it was 13 touchdowns scored in the game. Over 1,000 yards total of offense between the two teams. I think Marino alone had 6 touchdowns and Ken O'Brien had 4. Unbelievable. Wesley Walker wasn't supposed to play in this game. He ends up having 4 touchdowns and I think 6 catches. And the play that I'm going to call out here is the deep bomb in overtime that Wesley Walker catches in the end zone to seal the victory 51-45. So Wesley Walker, one of the greatest wide receivers in New York Jets history, locks it down at number 6 for us with that incredible shootout against the Miami Dolphins. And I think the Jets were 10-1 to start that year too, which is absolutely... Can you imagine the Jets being 10-1 right now? I don't think I would be alive. I would die. That would be amazing. All right, number 5. This, one of my favorite games of all time, especially as a kid. We're going back to the year 2000. This is a Week 4 game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Tampa. This is a very classic game for the New York Jets because Keyshawn Johnson was recently traded to the Buccaneers, and he kept calling himself a superstar, and he called Wayne Chrebet a flashlight. So in this game, the Jets make a massive comeback. I think they scored 2 touchdowns in a minute to actually win this game. And the play that I'm going to highlight here as the number 5 play in New York Jets history is the final touchdown that they score. I believe there's 52 seconds left. You'll see in the huddle, Curtis Martin throws his glove off right behind him out of the huddle. No one on the Buccaneers notice. And then Vinny Testaverde snaps the ball, hands it off to Curtis Martin. Curtis Martin rolls out to the right, throws a pass into the end zone. Wayne Chrebet looks like he's just floating in the air. Catches it for a touchdown, the running back pass. I don't know if I saw many of those that led to game-winning touchdowns. So that's going to be the number 5 play in Jets history. And after that, I think it was the New York Times or Post, someone like that, calls Wayne Chrebet the Green Lantern. So we got our revenge on Keyshawn Johnson there, which was kind of nice. And of course, you got to get all-timer Wayne Chrebet in this conversation. All right, number 4. Number 4 goes back to one of the greatest games in NFL history, which is the Monday Night Miracle. So the Jets were down 23 points at one point. It was 30-7, I believe. Yeah, 30-7. The Jets make a crazy comeback. Lavernius Coles actually has his first ever touchdown catch in that game with one hand, which was pretty sweet. Not going to make this list, though. The play that I'm going to refer to, though, is we're tied 30-30. Right after we score to tie it up, Jay Fiedler throws a deep bomb, 37 to 30 now. The Dolphins are winning. The Jets march right down the field. We get to, I think it was the 2 yard line, 3 yard line. And instead of giving it to our Hall of Fame, Pro Bowl, All Pro running back, Curtis Martin, Vinny Testaverde fakes a handoff to Curtis Martin and floats it to the most unlikely of recipients in the end zone, which is Jumbo Elliott. I think he was like 6'7", 300 pounds, never caught a pass in his entire life. Not only did he not catch it, or did he catch it, he bobbles it 3 times before he like lands on the ground and secures it. One of the greatest plays, and you'll always see that image of his eyes all wide and sparkly looking up into the lights. It's a really great moment in Jets history. And then, of course, that ties the game up. The Jets march down the field. John Hall kicks the game-winning field goal. And it's one game that is like unforgettable for all Jets fans, and most of them left, including my own father. So, yeah, wish I was old enough to go to that one, but it was a Monday night game, and I think I was like 8 or something like that. So Jumbo Elliott makes play number 4 in New York Jets history. Number 3, we're into the top 3. Here we go. This is my favorite win that I ever saw in real life. I wasn't at this game because I was previously there during the regular season, and we lost like 54-3 or something like that. So I was like, I am not going there, and I got tortured when I was there. So I was like, I am not going back to New England. But we go to New England in 2010 for the AFC divisional playoff game. We've been tortured by Tom Brady most of our lives, and the Jets somehow pull it off and win this game against the Patriots. And there are so many moments in this game that I could have called out. And you can see in the image behind me, I've got the flight boys, Antonio Holmes, Jericho Cotchery, Braylon Edwards. But the play I'm going to call out is a fade into the back left corner of the end zone. Just say Antonio Holmes, where he gets 1 foot down and a knee down to secure the catch. Unbelievable. It seemed like a play that the Jets wouldn't make. And I think that's why it was like so surprising, so awesome. And it was also, we were unsure if it was a touchdown. So like there was a lot of suspense waiting for the review to happen and all of that good stuff. But a massive, massive play in that game to give us the lead. So I think that catch was in the fourth quarter, and it actually separated us by 2 scores. So it was 14-11. We score with Santonio Holmes to take it to 21-11. Then with like 2 minutes left, it's 21-14. Of course, the Patriots are going to come back. And then this play also could have been in my top 10, but I left it out. Sean Green again. 15-yard, I think 16, 17-yard run into the end zone. Lays on the ball, takes a nap. Rex Ryan runs down the field and celebrates in the end zone with them, gets a penalty. But yeah, that was one of the greatest catches I've seen in Jets history. So Santonio Holmes makes the top 3. All right, here we go. Top 2. The top 2 play, number 2 of all time. This is probably the most important game, besides obviously the big game that we've ever had. This was in 1968. The New York Jets play. Were they Oakland at the time, or were they Las Vegas or Los Angeles? Don't know. They played the Raiders in the AFL championship game. They are down with 7 minutes left in the game. And if you watch that show I was just talking about, America's Game or whatever it's called, Don Maynard and Joe Namath talk about this play where they know they're down. I think they were down 23-20, and they needed a big play. So they had a play called, and then Joe Namath says, we are going to audible out of it if George Atkinson, who's the cornerback for the Raiders, presses Don Maynard because he knows Don Maynard can beat him. And what happens? He presses. So Don Maynard does a great job. He like runs a deep route, but gives Namath enough room that he could throw it to the outside and catch it over Maynard's shoulder. And Maynard will say, this is the greatest catch of my entire career. Don't ask me to do it again because I don't know if I catch it. And Namath throws a great pass. Maynard catches it. It's probably like a 40-yard bomb, 50-yard bomb. takes like 5 steps, and then actually drops the ball. So in today's game, I don't know if it would be called a catch fumble. It would be the most confusing thing ever. It would be so controversial. But it looks like he takes 5 steps, and then the defender pops the ball out. So complete a catch, and then 2 plays later, I think it was, Namath rolls out to the left, throws a sliding touchdown pass to Maynard, who's like sliding on his knees in the back of the end zone. So I'm calling that deep pass the number 2 play in New York Jets history, because that seals the win for the Jets against the Raiders, takes them to the Super Bowl. So with that, we get to number 1. Now, number 1 is not the most exciting play in Jets history. Probably in the moment it was very exciting, but it could just be any typical touchdown. But because of the game we were in, it makes it the most important play in New York Jets history. The play I'm referring to is in Super Bowl III, Matt Snell running off the left side for a touchdown, our only touchdown we've ever scored in a Super Bowl. So Matt Snell is going to take the prize because that gave us a hefty lead to start the game. And then what happens after that? The defense locks it down. I think it was like a 4-yard run. He ends up running 30 times for 121 yards. I think we picked off, it was both Unitas and who was the other quarterback? I can't remember. We pick him off 4 times, which is absolutely insane. Defense played awesome. Won the game 16-7. We kicked a bunch of field goals after that touchdown. And it led us to not only that, but it was like the guarantee. Like Joe Namath put everything out there saying, I bet we're going to win this game. We're the biggest underdogs in history. This springboarded the NFL into what it is today. So I don't think anyone will ever beat this. I think if you go back in the best plays in NFL history, or the most important plays in NFL history, parts of this game would be in there. So Matt Snell, I don't know why. He has a very bad relationship with the Jets at this point. He's never come to any events. He hates the Jets for some reason. I don't understand. But he is the number 1 play in New York Jets history, and you will see it on videos for the rest of my life as a Jets fan. So that was my top 10. So we had Richie Anderson, Braylon Edwards, Sean Green, Lance Mel, Wesley Walker, Wayne Corbett, Jumbo Elliott, Santonio Holmes, Don Maynard, and Matt Snell. I think it's a pretty solid list. Now, here are my honorable mentions that you can definitely argue could be in this top 10. Santonio Holmes, you can put any of his game-winning touchdowns. There was one against the Browns that you could put in, the one against the Texans you can put in. You could put in the big play against the Lions to get us in field goal range. So there's a bunch. Santana Moss, deep pass from Chad Pennington. That could be in here. You look at Curtis Martin and Blake Spence. It's kind of like one play. Blake Spence in the AFC Championship game against the Broncos blocks a punt. It's recovered on the 1. Curtis Martin runs it in for a touchdown to take the lead in the AFC Championship game. We lost that game, though, so I didn't feel like it fit the top 10. This was one that I was really struggling with. This should have been probably number 10, but I like the Richie Anderson one more. The Darrelle Revis interception against the Cowboys on 9/11. Game-changing play, allowed us to win that game with less than 2 minutes left. The Garrett Wilson catch, obviously, against the Texans this year. Aaron Rodgers throwing into the back of the end zone. He does like a Jumpman logo and makes the catch. His shin was in, so that's going to be one of the greatest catches I've ever seen. But it was a meaningless game in a meaningless season, so it's not going to be remembered. Well, it will be remembered, but like the moment wasn't big enough. Then I said David Harris, his interception against Tom Brady in the divisional playoff game. He runs it all the way back, but gets caught. And then the reason why I didn't include it is we don't score on the drive. If we scored on the drive, it'd be a different story, but we missed a field goal. So one of the biggest plays in Jets history, but it didn't lead to anything. Sean Ellis, I have all of his sacks in the playoff games against the Patriots. That didn't make the cut. And then him running into the end zone against the Bills, that's just one that's near and dear to my heart. Was another big play, but it's just a meaningless game against the Bills, so it didn't really matter. Chad Morton, kick returner for the Jets. He had 2 kick returns in, I think it was opening day against the Bills in like 2002 or something like that. But the big play was his kickoff return in overtime, which was actually the quickest overtime period of all time, because the kickoff, he just runs it in for a touchdown, game's over. But he doesn't make the cut because it's a meaningless game against the Bills. Keyshawn Johnson. I tried to get a play in from that playoff game against the Jaguars, where Keyshawn Johnson had one of the greatest games of all time. He catches a touchdown pass early in the game. Then Vinny Testaverde throws an interception, and for some reason, on the return, the guy who intercepted the pass pitches it backward, and the ball, no one catches it, so the ball's just loose, and Keyshawn Johnson comes out of there and recovers the fumble. Then Keyshawn Johnson has a reversed run for a touchdown, and then he picks off a pass on a Hail Mary at the end of the game. So he had a receiving touchdown, rushing touchdown, fumble recovery, and interception, but none of those plays made my top 10, unfortunately. And then for me, my favorite play in New York, one of my favorite plays in New York Jets history is Jericho Cotchery. Jericho Cotchery pulls his hamstring on a play against the Browns. I think it was like a meaningless game against the Browns. It's third down, gotta have it type play to keep this game alive. He runs out across the middle, pulls his hamstring. He's hobbling. Sanchez is rolling out, calls for Cotchery to go to the right. Sanchez throws a horrible pass. Cotchery dives, makes the catch on this torn hamstring, and it advances the ball. We get a new set of downs. So one of the most unlikely selfless plays I've ever seen. Pretty heroic, to be totally honest with you. And Cotchery was a good Jet, so it's good to mention him. So I think those are some of my honorable mentions. Let me know if you have any honorable mentions or anything you would put in my top 10. I would love to hear from the good folks out there that, were around a little bit longer than me, or maybe you were at a game that was more memorable to you that doesn't stick out in my mind. So please let me know. Now that was fun. Maybe I'll do a top 5 worst plays in Jets history. That might be kind of cool, but there might be too many of them to count. I don't know. We'll see. But all right, that is all I have for today. What I want to do now is just answer the trivia question, and we will get out of here. So my trivia question was, there were 5 players that have their uniforms retired by the New York Jets and 1 coach. Who are the 5 players, and what are their numbers, and who is the coach? So let's start with the obvious one. Number 12, Joe Namath is number 1. Number 2 is number 13, Don Maynard, the wide receiver that we talked about. Then we have number 28, Curtis Martin, the running back. Number 73, Joe Klecko, the defensive tackle. This one might be the curveball that people don't know. Number 90, Dennis Byrd, the defensive end. The reason why Dennis Byrd's number is retired is because he is one of the most inspirational players in Jets history. Back in, I think, 1992, he came around the edge on a sack and was paralyzed on the hit that happened. Then he eventually is able to function again, years and years later. He's able to walk, all that stuff. And then what happens is before this New York Jets versus Patriots divisional playoff game, he gives a big speech to the whole team before the game. Super inspirational, or if it was the night before, super inspirational. When they walk out for the coin toss, they actually bring his jersey out with them. And then unfortunately, a couple of years later, Dennis Byrd dies in a car accident. So all that stuff he goes through, and then to go that way. But he's one of the most inspirational players in New York Jets history. So those are the 5 that are retired. And then the coach is obviously the coach who won us the Super Bowl, Weeb Ewbank. So that is it. One thing that you might notice is you don't really see any players on the Jets wear number 24. You also don't see any players on the Jets wear number 80. So while Darrelle Revis and Wayne Chrebet aren't officially retired, their jerseys aren't really issued anymore. So I don't know if that means that a jersey retirement is coming, or if it's just out of respect, no one really wears those jerseys. So we'll see. But I hope that was an easier one than last time, and you guys were able to get that because that Andre Roberts one is still haunting me. But all right, everybody, this was a really fun episode. I was glad to do this top 10. Hopefully you agree, you disagree. I'd love to hear it. And I think we still got 4 weeks left till training camp. So we still have some time. I'll still be coming on every Monday and talk to you more about what's going on in New York Jets land. So once again, if you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all the things, JuicyJet25. If you could please subscribe, rate, review, that would help me greatly. If you're watching my videos, please give it a follow, give it a subscribe. And then, yeah, I appreciate everybody for listening, and I'll talk to you again next week. See ya.